So, hello everyone. Justin and I are here. We've just been having our little chat before we get live and just connecting with one another. I am broadcasting to you from Portugal, so it's rather bright here. I'm sorry if my eyes don't really open very well. I've got a white wall glaring at me in this beautiful view of a river. I am feeling very happy to be in this conversation with Justin and all of you. I'm on the beginning of a retreat where we just have juice and we look at our relationship, or this is what I'm going to be doing, looking at my relationship to food and the role that it plays in every way other than a nutritional role. So all the ways that I numb or compensate or use food in a social way, all of those things. And doing this video for me today and talking about the song Fuel for Your Fire by John Neméth is really meaningful to me because I don't think this is going to be easy. And so I'm sensing into how helpful this conversation already is, even though we haven't had it yet, because I'm kind of turning into something difficult to become more conscious about it. And I think this is really going to help. So good morning to everybody, and or good afternoon or evening, depending on when you're listening. And welcome to this next part of Turning Towards Life with Justin and I. We're really happy that we're here and that you're here as well.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. It's wonderful hearing you introduce yourself. And I need to ask you to do a technical thing before I say anything else, which is I'm watching our stream. And I think because you've got your Zoom on, not on gallery view, what everyone is seeing is you and then me.
Is that better?
We'll see.
Lucky we've got
we've got both of us.
CTO with us on live on the call.
We're both visible now. So there you go. We've learned something about the way Zoom works. Is that how
I see it? It's
how everyone sees it. So I'm so pleased that we're having this conversation again this morning. It's one of the things I'm noticing about doing this is, aside from the real joy of having a conversation that's reaching people, and I know from many of the comments that people have been leaving, and then from speaking to people who I know who've been joining us, that there's something important happening from you and I getting on with this conversation and being in it as fully and as genuinely as we can. And so that's very exciting for me that we're doing this, but also this topic, this song, which I'm enormously pleased that you chose it, because it's a song that since I first heard it, I've also turned to very often if somehow I've lost my way or have got confused about my relationship with the world, have in one way or another concluded that somehow either I'm meant to have a life without any difficulty, which seems to be mistake number one, or that I'm meant to be powerful enough to head off difficulty and be in control of it, or which is mistake number two. And my mistake number three is something like, I'm the only one. Everyone else is fine. It's only my life that is filled with troubles, and because it's only my life that fills with troubles, this is proof of how tiny and inconsequential and irresponsible I am. And I'm grateful that you're bringing this song, because it feels very personally important. And I'm grateful for John Neméth, whatever it was that had him put this together. Which reminds me to say to everyone else, apart from to you, which is that if you didn't get a chance to listen to the song yet, we posted a link to it so that you can get it on Spotify or on YouTube after you've watched this, or maybe if you're watching this later, you could pause it and go and listen to the song before you hear the rest of our talk together.
Yeah, I feel the same, Justin. I feel moved in different ways depending on what's going on in my life with this song. One of my favorite bits is when he lists, like, when you get tricked, throw it in the fire. When your house gets burned, throw it in the fire. When you lose a friend, throw it in the fire. And he picks on themes that, like, most of us have experienced one way or another. And in knowing and feeling that he's made this song, that it also arises for me that, so far I don't think I've met anyone where I've had enough of a conversation with them anyway, where they don't have any difficulties. Like, the nature of life is that there are difficult things in it and there's suffering in it. And then we have a choice as to how we orient to it, how we relate to those things. And this song, for me, is an invitation to become impassioned, to become more enlivened by the life that arises in my spheres, and to have it be fuel rather than some kind of way that I'm depleted or diminished, or that it confirms the narrative that there's something wrong with me. Like you were saying, Justin, there's some way of orienting to it that feels more hopeful, more possible. And certainly, like, I think it's also the means by which we get to join with other people. We are all in a world of difficulty in some way. And do we have that be the way that we confirm stories about ourselves that we've learned in the past? Or do we find a way of relating to it that opens the world, that gives us more means to connect, that gives us more passion for the things that we love and the people that we love in the world? And that's why it feels like I think that's the theme of it, is this integrative, welcoming, rather than turning away or denying the parts of me that aren't comfortable or that I don't like, or that I feel are not acceptable. And I think that's why it feels so hopeful and important to me.
I think this is a song, it's just coming to me whilst you're saying all of this, Lizzie, that this is really a song about no excuses. And I'm trying to say it this way very deliberately, because one way we can go with the inevitable difficulty of life, and you're right, I so agree with you, I don't know anybody who doesn't have difficulty in their life, and it doesn't matter whether they have super comfortable material circumstances or are struggling with basics, but there's trouble everywhere. And one way to go is to, like you said, is to kind of tune out from life, is to have an orientation to life which is difficulties coming my way and I'm too small to respond to any of it. And another way that we can go is sort of overinflating ourselves, which lends to such trouble, which is, I ought to be able to deal with all of it. Like, if I was a proper person, I wouldn't be in this situation, none of it. All of my suffering and all of my pain and all of my difficulty would go away. But a dear friend of mine who you also know, Lizzie, taught me this phrase, right-sizing ourselves, some years ago, which is meeting life at the size that a human being can be, not bigger than we are and not smaller than we are, which means finding out that there's many kinds of difficulties that we can deal with, where changing the way we're living or changing the way we're relating to something or somebody can bring about a profound shift, and there are many that can't be addressed that way. And the truthful thing to do is to be true about it. And when we're truthful about our situation, it's possible, like you're saying, and like John Neméth is saying, to have it be fuel for being alive, have it be a way of deeply committing ourselves to life rather than withdrawing or tuning out. And I've been noticing, I can't remember what it was that brought this to me over the last few days, which is what an incredibly dissociative society, culture most of us live in. We're given so many billions of ways of turning away from this when we're in difficulties, going, oh, I'll just feel ashamed and tiny and small and turn towards social media will make me feel okay, rather than life itself flowing through me and having me bring myself, or buying things will make me feel okay, or simply what was I thinking, piling on self-criticism, that will be the way, and none of them are the way. Actually, a far more truthful way is to say what you're saying, which is everyone has difficulty. Oh my goodness, so this means I'm actually just the same as everyone else. I'm neither smaller nor bigger. I'm the same. I'm a human being with a body and a heart and a mind. And so this is how life is going to be. Not the particular circumstance, but the being in difficulty is going to be how it's going to be for all of us.
Yeah. So interesting, these conversations, Justin, because as usual, my mind is just pinging into all these lovely whole conversations that we could be having. I so enjoy like the effect of when you speak, like I feel like lights get brightened of my ideas about things, and my articulation occurs to me in this very natural way. I'm just really appreciating how that feels. I think it's really understandable that we're all dissociated. I think being human beings is really, really confronting. And, you know, when I, for example, tune into how much I love people, how much I care about them, at the moment I feel very, very vulnerable about just how much I mind what happens to people and what experiences they have. And of course, that's their life and their journey, but I feel so so tender about people that it feels really risky, and everything is so fragile. So often to dissociate from that feels preferable to actually being the kind of feeling that I am. And all of these ways that we dissociate are ultimately pointing to something that we feel so tender about. But because we haven't really learned in our lives, in our education, and mostly our families, to turn into what we're dissociating from, it's been validated so many times. Like, you know, get on with it, pull yourself together, chin up, stiff upper lip, whatever the kind of cultural norms are. It's become so habitual just to kind of crack on. And underneath that, and on the other side of that, is just such tenderness. And for me, like terror of losing people, and the riskiness and the fragility of being a human being, and that anything could happen at any moment, that we could lose people, we could get ill, we can die. You know, hundreds of thousands of things could happen to us at any moment. And so just in this vulnerability, it feels like, you know, this song, this conversation is an invitation to be courageous enough to be with and to acknowledge and to be present to all of these facets of being human that feel so delicate. And that's really how I'm feeling right now, is that we're in a precarious situation as humans, and to really be in the experience of what it is to be us is by its nature really vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, though, there feels like something really grounding and real. And that also feels very life-giving, even though it might not be really happy or something. It feels like life and it feels real. And that's what I appreciate about this turning towards thing, is that we can be real.
No, it's beautiful to hear what you're saying, and I'm finding myself very touched by the way you're coming at this, and what it is that you're bringing out as well. This thing that you say about everyone we love, ourselves and everyone we love, is vulnerable all the time, and we keep on getting reminded of this everywhere. And it's striking me that part of the project of turning towards life that we're talking about is the project of being truthful. And not, so it's not, I've been thinking a lot about this and coaching, because of course this is the background that brings both of us into this. That when any time that any of us tries to help people, one of the most unhelpful ways that we can be is to be not truthful. So we can go, exactly as you say, chin up, you'll just get over this, which is not a truthful way of coming at this, because maybe not. Maybe what's coming at us, we don't have the wherewithal to get over. The thing to do is to feel it and know it for what it is, and bring ourselves as fully as we can into it. Or the other way we can go is ignore it, pretend that nothing's happening, or we can go, we can get into blaming other people, having people blame themselves. And I'm appreciating that. Certainly, I know the way that when I'm doing my best to come at life the way that John Neméth says, and when I'm, when we're working with people who we might be coaching, that this encouragement that we find a way to be ever more truthful about the situations of our lives, but also truthful about how much is possible for human beings at the same time. That they're both two necessary sides. And there's this amazing book, if ever there's a book on some of the most profound difficulties that anyone can get into, there's this amazing book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, which I guess and he was writing about his experience of being in the Nazi concentration camps, and he says this extraordinary and beautiful thing, which is a powerful invitation to us, which is, even in the situation where everything's been taken from you, where there is nothing left, there's still the possibility that any of us might have some responsibility for our orientation to the situation that we're in. And this is his great wish that we find hope. And he doesn't mean hope like everything's going to work out. He means hope like, because I'm a person, I have some agency here. Both to really feel the magnitude of this situation I'm in, or that the people I love are in, and to respond to it. Even if all I can do to respond to it is to show care to a person who's near me. I can't change the circumstance, but I can change how I am with this person who's right next to me.
Yeah.
And so there's this theme of realness that you were bringing up, which allows us to turn in without self-annihilating and without giving up on our possibility in the world, all at the same time, without covering up, I think is what we're talking about, and what John Neméth is inviting in this amazing song.
Yeah, and I love it that you bring it back to coaching as well, Justin, because I often feel really strongly with me, with the people who come through our programs to become integral coaches, and with my clients as well, is that there is this beautiful way that our difficulties get reoriented from maybe our past, self-criticism and self-hatred and self-judgment of, there's something wrong with me, I've got to get rid of this thing that makes my life difficult, or, whatever it is that we feel is our stuff. It gets reoriented so that it becomes the way that the world is connected, the way that human beings relate to one another, the way that we can join together. And ultimately, I think there's a process of dignifying all of our difficulty when it gets brought into relationship, that we get to shift the way that we are holding our wounds or our the things that have happened to us in our lives that maybe are shameful, or there's particular things that we think are unfixable or unsayable or unaddressable in us. And then inside of relationship, we get to literally the energy of those things shifts into something that's a gift, that however bad it felt or feels, however difficult it is, there's a way that inside the container of relationship, which is what we cultivate as coaches and as colleagues and with one another, bringing it into that field has the whole thing change. And for us to feel safe enough to bring that to one another in the world feels like a kind of crucial part of being a human and being okay here, like enjoying our lives, is that we bring out all these secret kind of compartmentalized ways and things into the light, into the field, into relationship. And when they're put in that place, and if we have faith enough to bring them to that place, and we feel safe enough to bring them to that place, they literally do change. And I think that's what is wholly miraculous for me about the work that we're doing, and why it's so meaningful, because it really feels like, issue by issue, person by person, difficulty by difficulty, our actual own inner world shifts. But I think that also affects the world on what it looks like and feels like the outside of us. And of course, in reality, even the notion of separation has to be questionable, because once you begin to share and we begin to open up, we realize, just as you're saying, Justin, that we're not different from one another, we're not separate from one another. The themes of our lives are so common, and there's universality to our difficulty, which is so comforting. And to realize we're not alone is so important for a being. To not be alone is deeply foundationally important for us. And so to be welcoming, and an invitation for difficulty to be welcomed into these spaces, seems like a complete no-brainer. In this moment, I can't really think of anything else that we should be up to in the world that would generate what our deepest intentions as human beings might be.
Seems to me that as you're talking, that the move that's so helpful for all of us, and that we're often working on supporting being possible in coaching, is exactly this move from I'm separate from the world to we're all in this together. Because and this is John Nemeth's point, I think, also, which is that when we know ourselves as separate, our troubles are, I don't know, some kind of punishment, or there's some kind of proof of my awfulness when everyone else is okay, or my naivety, or my selfishness, or whatever it is. They're all the troubles just come as proof of my very, very particular difference from everybody and everything. And it's actually our troubles that show us when we soften ourselves enough and allow ourselves to be open enough, show us that we and everybody are all one something. Mm-hmm. Which is really another way of saying that everybody and everything is life itself. And when we know that, it changes. Here's the thing that's striking me right now, Lizzie, is it changes the project from how do I have a life that is together and groovy where I feel happy all the time and never have any worry, to, and you said this, and I think this is what sparked this in me to say this, how do I live my life as a gift? And when we get to find that, because we're not separate from anything else that we can, or anybody else, that we can bring our lives as a gift, then of course, and John Neméth doesn't quite say this, and I sort of wish he would, that not only throwing our troubles to make a fire that will have us live is a wonderful thing, but make it possible for us to bring ourselves to the trouble of others. That's what's most called for, because the whole world is in trouble, and we're all in trouble most of the time, even if it's because, and you said this also before, Lizzie, even it's because everything right now is fine, but it's all vulnerable. And it could all be taken from us at any minute. What more could what better way could there be to address the troubles of the world than bringing ourselves as a gift and knowing that we're all in trouble all the time? And that's such a different orientation from fixing it all up. And of course, there are things to be fixed. I totally get that. There are things that we must fix. And it's partly actually this knowing that we're all in trouble that helps us to fix them, like fixing hunger, or fixing economic inequality, or fixing maybe this terrible way that we are extracting everything from the world around us without putting things back in, without taking care, also comes from exactly this point, is we when we lose contact with the vulnerability of everything, with the fragility of everything, we can do that.
Yeah.
So isn't that quite, I think one last thing that strikes me is that I'm learning from our conversation is that one of the connections between vulnerability and strength is that the more that we are truthful about our vulnerability and how vulnerable everything is, the more likely it is that we can bring ourselves with the required strength to do something about the things we can do something about.
Yeah. And also bringing ourselves in vulnerability has more substance to it than a kind of fragile holding together of an image that everything is fine and everything is okay. Like feeling like I can only show up if everything's fine feels far less strong than I can show up in whatever is happening for me today. And that I can be here with you, not feeling particularly like everything's okay, but like I'm being truthful, and I'm being I'm coming into any conversation or any place with something substantial on my hands that other people will also be able to feel and sense as well, and not just a kind of brittle self-image that is really in compensation for loads of other stuff behind the scenes. I think that kind of authenticity, transparency, coherence feeling feels like a really strong way to be a human being, because you're then working with what is, rather than with something held together by something pretty thin, actually. And I think that's the big invitation of working with difficulty in this way, is it allows us to show up with substance and with something as you say, that's a gift. Life is a gift, rather than life as a demand on how things have to be in order to show up.
You said something so brilliant that I want to pick up on, that maybe we will come to at another time. So I'm aware that we're probably, it's about,
it's 9:30 now.
But our dear friend Steve March, who's, I know it's a lovely video of you and Steve talking about the class that he's coming to teach in London in a few weeks' time, going around at the moment online. And Steve's definition of authenticity that I really appreciated was not something like, I'm just true to myself, whatever that means. It was being truthful about the situation that we're in, and being truthful about the freedom that we have within that situation. Which is exactly, you were saying this in your own very beautiful words a minute ago, that when we can really be truthful about how things are, and truthful that we have whatever degree of freedom there is in it, that's, so the connection between authenticity, what people call authenticity, and truth, but not just truth about ourselves, truth about the life that we're in the midst of, I think is what's coming out here. And I was trying to find something else. I didn't know if I could find it. It was probably too far away. I'm looking down here. I've been reading Mark Nepo's beautiful Book of Awakening, and he quoted something from the Tao, which was, when we get rigid is when we're most likely to snap.
Yes.
But when we can be soft, right in the midst of things, is when it's possible to be most powerful. That this kind of soft responsiveness to the world is actually an extraordinarily powerful way to be.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, Justin, I'm just very appreciative of the orientation that arises by speaking like this. I think it's it really is a gift. And I just want to say thank you, and also thank you to the world, in a way, because you and I could talk like this with each other, and it would have a different quality if we didn't feel that there were other people with us, supporting us and being in the conversation with us, and being and actually wanting this conversation. The wanting of the conversation feels like it's part of the invitation for us. Like we're not in isolation, you and I, in this, and it feels like everybody with us is really with us, and I'm really appreciating that. And I love how everyone is commenting and sharing, and I feel very, very, very lucky and blessed to be in receipt of this conversation and the bigger feeling of creating a togetherness. You know, our part in the togetherness feels really important.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you to you, Lizzie, and I'm going to echo exactly what you've said, which is, it's turning out that our capacity to do this and have this conversation has a lot to do with how everyone else is being in it with us.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited about going and reading the comments, and we'll be diving in, no doubt, over the next few days, taking part in all of that.
Yeah.
We'll do this again next Sunday morning, all being well.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for generally saying a prayer for me in this retreat. I also appreciate any support that you can silently wing my way. I can feel the rising kind of encounter with myself that's coming. So anyway, next week I'll be able to tell you what it was like to be here and put myself on this quite challenging journey. In the meantime, and Justin, you'll be doing our source for next week, won't you?
Yes, I will.
Next Friday.
Yep.
So we look forward to that. And I guess just to say thank you for joining us, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.